Shields up, Iron Breakers. Rurikhan here coming at you with another video. Welcome back to Monster Hunter Rise, and today we're going to be talking about weapons. As you guys are most likely aware, I'm someone that likes to read every single comment that gets posted onto a video that I upload onto the channel. Now, obviously, I'm going to be missing a couple of them here and there because quite simply there's so many of them coming in, and I'm super thankful for it. I really appreciate people leaving comments and giving me feedback or just something that they thought was funny about a video or an opinion that I mentioned in a video that they disagree with. You know, I love reading through all of that stuff. Naturally, I can't respond to all of them because that would be pretty much a full-time job at this point. But know that I do try and read as many of them as possible, and it is very useful for me to basically keep a finger on the pulse of the community to see what you guys think about the stuff that we are talking about. And, you know, through reading these comments, sometimes I realize, you know, I did say a couple of stuff in this video that could be interpreted in a different way, and so I figured that particularly when it comes to weapon, I should make a pretty clear stance so that people understand where I stand when it comes to this particular topic. And that is, are there weapons that Rurikhan actually hates, that he can't stand, that he has like some kind of disdain for players that use them? And this is something that I noticed, for instance, in the latest Third Fleet podcast, where, you know, when Gaijin told me that Yuna dropped the bow, I was like, yes, she dropped the bow, she's using a different weapon, I'm so happy. And it's like, I am genuinely happy because there's obviously weapons that I like more and that I like less. And among the weapons that I tend to like less, you will find obviously the longsword, the bow, and I've expressed in the past, like, you know, the reasons why I personally don't like the longsword is I feel the weapon is maybe a little bit too strong for its own good. But I kind of feel that potentially people look at that opinion and they think like, oh wow, so Rurikhan doesn't like people that play longsword, or Rurikhan does not approve that people actually play this weapon. And I wanted to make this video to basically clarify that, for starters, you should never look for anyone else's approval for playing a weapon. I realize that sometimes people go into a live stream or something, or they just write a comment on a video like, hey, which weapon would be a good one for me? Like, I like this weapon and I want to learn a new weapon. That's a different thing altogether, because some people might actually see, you know, me saying something like, oh man, I hate the greatsword, and they'll be like, huh, so not the greatsword, I hate the longsword. They'll be like, huh, so the longsword is not a good weapon, or the longsword is frowned upon, or something like that. And no, that is completely not the case. A lot of the stuff are kind of like memes that get generated throughout my live streams, and, you know, people know that I don't like the longsword, so they try to come up with ways to force me to use the longsword, because that would be a funny thing. Like, sometimes they would donate to the stream and be like, aha, next hunt, Rurikhan, you play the longsword, and I'd play the longsword, or something like that, right? And, you know, it's a bit of a meme, some of the weapons that I personally don't like. Like I said, longsword and bow are kind of like an example. It doesn't mean that these are bad weapons, which they are clearly not. I'm hoping that some of my other videos provide a little bit more insight into that. But, you know, there is a point where I feel like maybe someone new comes into the channel and they hear me just like slam on the longsword or slam on the bow, particularly like, for instance, in the latest Third Fleet podcast episode where, you know, I was super happy about Yuna dropping it, right? And that's their first impression that they get of me, and they might just be like, oh, so Rurikhan is one of those guys, huh? It's like, listen, let me tell you. You guys should play whatever weapon you feel like. As a matter of fact, the advice that I usually give to anyone that is new to Monster Hunter, particularly because a lot of people join in Monster Hunter World, right? So the advice that I would usually give to people is like, look, at the start of the game, you're going to get one of each weapon in your item stash. So what you do is you go into the training room and you pick up each of these weapons and you just try them out against the training dummy. You know, just go in there and take a couple of swings at it and see which weapon feels best. And that's how I would advise people to select their weapons. I would never say something like, oh, you should play Gunlance because Gunlance is the best. I mean, I will say that actually a lot of times, but I don't really mean it, right? Like, sometimes I might want someone, hey, you should really just try it out at least. But because I'm just curious to see how these people would feel using a weapon that I personally really like obviously, I would really like to see what Yuna's opinion is on the Gunlands, because I think that would be a fun discussion to have. But ultimately, what I care about is that someone that gets into Monster Hunter enjoys themselves, and that is regardless of the weapon. Now, in certain situations, there are weapons that can get annoying for other players, like, for instance, before we get brace decorations, something like a longsword or dual blades are extremely annoying because of the fact that they flinch everybody else. So it requires for those players to maybe have a little bit more discipline as to where they are positioning in the monster during a hunt, so that they don't completely screw over everybody else. And that is also, I feel, one of the situations where we see a significant amount of animosity being thrown at longsword users. But I just want to make sure that people understand, I don't care what weapon somebody else uses. It can bother me in terms of if they're constantly tripping me, or, if you're playing a hammer and your sole objective is to launch me into the air. Like, once in a while, it's funny. Like, I think I remember in Fatalis, someone launched me into the air right into Fatalis's breath, almost killed me. Like, that was funny. Like, I get that. But, if there's a hunter in your hunt and they just constantly using the potential of their weapon to screw over your hunt, either intentionally or unintentionally, it can get annoying. But ultimately, when it comes to my opinion on this, is like, you should play whatever weapon is the most fun to you. And at the same time, you should try and learn how to play that weapon in a way that does not reduce the fun of anybody else. And there's a lot of weapons that have potential for this. The gun lance is not innocent in this either, because like, a lot of times I've blasted people with wyvern fire. It is what it is. I usually try to aim it in a way that's not going to affect other players. If you go back and watch through my live streams, unless, if I'm playing with Kegren or Wada, sometimes the wyvern fire might just intentionally aim directly at the face of one of them. These are accidents, people, they happen. But, if I'm playing with a bunch of strangers, every single time that I pop wyvern fire, I'll try to aim it either upwards, depending on the position of the other players, so that, I hit the monster while at the same time avoiding the hitbox of the other hunters, or maybe I'll move it slightly more to one of the sides where the hunters are not, or I'll aim it downwards. Now, is this a surefire way to ensure that I'm not gonna be hitting people with wyvern fire? No, a lot of times I'm still gonna hit people, but it's not intentional, you see? And that's the whole thing. I just want people to have fun at the end of the day. Every weapon has potential to be annoying here and there. It's all about the people who are using them and how they choose to use those things, whether or not they're doing annoying things on purpose or whatever. There's also, obviously, the cluster bombs from Heavy Bowgun, which are really frustrating, which is why during a lot of my live streams I would say, guys, my hunting rooms are a cluster-free zone, okay? We don't want to deal with no cluster bombs. That's a little bit of a meme, because obviously people can use cluster bombs if they know how to use them without completely destroying 3 other hunters that are trying to put damage into a monster. But, ultimately the main reasoning behind this video is like, look guys, I don't want anyone to think that I have some kind of a prejudice towards a certain weapon type, because I can see where someone that is, coming in fresh to this channel, they might start getting the idea, oh wow, Rurikhan doesn't like this weapon and that weapon and the other weapon. Either some of them might get the idea that those weapons aren't good, some of them might get the idea that those weapons are frowned upon. Someone, there's a lot of ideas that people can take from some of the stuff that I say on videos, and I think one of the reasons why that happens is because I always look at the audience that I'm speaking to, you guys that are watching this video. I always look at it almost as if I'm, just shooting the shit with one of my friends in real life. That's the way that I try to organize my videos. I'm just, talking about stuff, not really being overly serious, and just throwing in a couple of jokes and things that I find to be funny. And I've seen multiple times on some comments that people don't get the joke, they don't get the meme, and some of them even get like offended, like, oh, why you gotta be so negative about this thing or that thing and the other. And sometimes I also just tend to be a little bit overly negative about some things. I'm not a perfect person, okay? I'm not perfect, and I'm never going to be, and I'm not trying to be, because I don't really try to filter myself. I don't really put a persona of myself out there. I know that a lot of content creators, they have their persona. With me, what you see in these videos a lot of the times is what you get in real life. The good and the bad, and it is what it is. I'm not perfect. I'm never going to be. Sometimes I say things that I then look back upon and I'm like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have said that. That thing can get misinterpreted. Or sometimes I even just change my opinion on certain topics. These are things that everybody do as they move on through life. And I think I've over-explained this much more than I actually should have. It's actually getting almost philosophical at this point. It doesn't really make a lot of sense. Ultimately, play whatever weapon you want. Don't feel like my weapon choices should guide you in any way. I mean, I'm playing gun, lance, and sword and shield because quite simply those are the weapons that I have the most fun with. And obviously I'll play other weapons as well. And you should play whatever weapon is the most fun for you, and that is my stance on this particular topic. And hopefully none of you were like, oh, I can't believe that Rurikhan doesn't like my favorite weapon. Yeah, I'm not gonna like all of the weapons. It is what it is. You should still play whichever weapon is the most fun for you, and this is something that I always try to reinforce whenever someone new comes into the game, whenever someone asks me for advice about this kind of stuff. I always try to make sure, look, just try out a couple of weapons, see which one works for you, play that one. Doesn't matter if it's good, if it's bad, if someone likes it, if someone doesn't. I'll still give you guys a hard time, mind you. If you come into my lobby with a longsword, I'll still, because I still play into the meme. It is what it is. But you shouldn't take stuff too seriously, because at the end of the day, I'm just, cracking jokes and throwing out random banter because I think that is fun, and I'm going to continue doing it. And if somebody doesn't like the way that I do it, then, that's too bad, and I'm sorry, but I don't really want the change just for the sake of, getting more views or getting better results in the algorithm. I don't really care too much about that. Anyway, moving on from that particular topic, just a quick side note. The All Weapons tournament is almost coming into the finals, and you guys did my gun lance dirty. Again, you did it twice. You did my gun lance dirty twice. I'll never forgive you guys for this. I hope you understand. And now I'm going to go back to playing more Final Fantasy XIV and Bravely Default 2 until Monster Hunter Rise comes out, so wake me up when that time comes. Thank you all very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button. If you did not enjoy this video, hit the dislike button. Feedback, as always, is very important. I'll see you guys in the next one. Stay strong, stay safe, peace out.